going to introduce firstly Hannah, Dr. Hannah Phelan is one of our previous ZADP in-country fellows. She's an anaesthetic trainee, and she then went on to be one of the first remote fellows. So having had the experience of working in country, then came on board as a remote fellow, and subsequently we've enticed her to staying on as the lead for the remote fellow programme. And so she's going to do a brief summary of how the remote fellowship programme is going, and then we're just going to have a bit of a Q&A session, a bit of a chat with Nathan, myself, and a few of the others. So we're going to have Brenda, who's a third-year trainee in Zambia in the University Teaching Hospital, and hopefully Chalwe is going to come online as well, who's one of the fourth-year trainees. And then Anna Janowitz, who is a consultant at Guy's and Tommy's Hospital in London, who is the chair for EADP, so the Ethiopian Anaesthesia Development Programme, and a member of the World Anaesthesia Society Committee. And they're hoping to start their remote fellowship. So we thought we'd have a bit of a discussion around the challenges that occur with changing to remote fellowships. So Hannah, I'll hand over to you if that's all right.
Hi, hello. Thank you for the introduction, Emma. I must apologise in advance that I have a small limpet that should be in bed, running around the kitchen. So if the sound quality is not very good, I will mute for a while and allow some questions to occur. However, I'll see how far we can get. So our remote fellowship was created as ZADP adapted to the unfolding of this global pandemic in 2020, and it started off with recently recalled fellows giving more ad hoc teaching sessions through video conferencing, and over time we built on this program of weekly teaching sessions with the addition of clinical governance meetings, so Journal Club and M&M. QI support has resulted in some fantastic projects which have gone to international conferences, and this has been thanks in no part to the pandemic itself, because of the amazing amount of virtual attendances that have been possible at these conferences. There's also been a number of publications which we can sort of put under the advocacy work hat, and a prime example, given the support for today, was articles printed in the Royal College of Anaesthetists International Anaesthetist newsletter. We all started a peer mentorship programme, which was mostly in response to the absence of in-country fellows, but also the fact that if you're a remote fellow, you don't get that benefit of the one-to-one contact and the ability to see what's going on the ground. So the peer mentorship programme was a bi-directional, beneficial installation, which allowed us to get to know each other on a bit more of a one-to-one basis and provide direct support, but also learn directly from the trainees about the current challenges. I'm just going to put them somewhere else.
All right.
Some help has arrived, so I've just been able to deposit her just for a couple of minutes. I do apologise. So we were able to have a little bit more one-to-one discussion, which was fantastic, and part of the programme that people seem to like the best. So as with any ABC in the anaesthetic world, we've continually returned to A, no least when in-country fellows returned to Zambia, and in August in the form of the fabulous Helen and Nate, who you heard speak earlier. Now, this was a long-awaited adaptation that we were to make, and one we were all really looking forward to. And it did pose the question of how we would collaborate together, and really from that, what part the remote programme would still continue to have with the return of in-country fellows. It's been great to see lots of practical teaching return to Zambia and practical clinical support, as well as some direct wellbeing activities. And actually for the remote fellowship, it provided an extra window into what was required in terms of teaching on the ground, and allowed us to collaborate together and make sure that our remote section of the fellowship, of the programme, has been enhanced, hopefully, and have been a little bit more useful to the anaesthetists in Zambia itself. We could share ideas over the last couple of years of how we might support trainees and how we might improve wellbeing support as well. The most recent adaptation has been working with a wider American collaboration, which Dylan mentioned at the beginning of today. And as with any collaboration, you always are concerned about teething problems, but actually what it's done is expand available teaching faculty for the more formal sort of curriculum-based teaching sessions. And it's also supported a big change, which is that now some of these sessions are managed in hybrid. So we have in-person teaching in UTH itself, but then links to Ndola, as well as remote sessions. I think that the best thing I can do is to sort of summarise. I think the big question this year is whether the remote fellowship should continue at all, given that we're having more and more in-country fellows. However, I think the main benefits of it are it really widens the net of those who can share their experience and expertise from all across the world. It's also a fantastic way for prospective in-country fellows to get involved in the programme at a time that they can't reach or cannot travel to Zambia. It enables people who couldn't normally travel to Zambia to be involved in the project. And I think just based on the last talk and sustainability, it maybe takes away some of our carbon footprint, as some activities can be supported remotely. The other thing that's been really clear this year is for trainees elsewhere in the country, at the moment in Ndola, it allows those trainees to attend teaching despite not being in Lusaka. I'm going to pause there. I think that's the main summary of our remote fellowship this year. And I will mute my mic for a bit and open the floor to questions.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, absolutely in awe of you doing sort of multiple tasks all at once there. There's been many sort of ZADP meeting where both Hannah and Sonia have had their wonderful children in the screen, and I'm always impressed with how they managed to hold it all together. So thank you, Hannah, for that sort of summary of the sort of remote fellowship. And as you say, we've worked closely together over the last few months, kind of making the in-country and the remote fellowship work. So what I would say is that if anyone has any questions from the floor, from anyone who wants to kind of find out a little bit more about this or remote fellowship, please do add them to the sort of webinar chat or put them in the Q&A section or raise your hand. We want to hear from you guys as well in terms of questions. And if none of those come, then we've got plenty of questions to ask as well. So, but yeah, it'd be really great to hear from you all as well, and your perspective, particularly for those of you who might not know quite how the remote fellowship has been working in the same sort of way. I actually wanted to go to Brenda first, if that's all right, and ask Brenda a question, just so that Hannah has a chance to kind of get sorted and settled. Brenda, if you're there, Brenda, I just wanted to ask you from a Zambian perspective, what's been the main sort of highlights and benefits of being part of the or having the remote fellows whilst you've been training in Zambia?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Brenda. Good to see you.
Good to hear from you too. Hi, Hannah, and good afternoon, everyone. So this program has actually benefited most of us, the students. The fact is that we have very few consultants in Zambia in anesthesiology. So therefore, about that, I'm in theater and my battery is about to die. Just connected to each other. Sorry. So I was saying that this program has really benefited us as students because we have very few consultants in Zambia. Therefore, this knowledge that you empower us, it's able to carry us through, because most of the time we are left alone to run theaters, and we actually manage because of this same knowledge that you people keep empowering us with. And I hope it will continue. And I just wish you could extend this also to other hospitals like Levi Manawasa University Teaching Hospital, because currently there are people who have just completed their internship and they intend to join the program. So we hope that this will extend to Levy as well, so that everyone can benefit from it.
Thank you, Brenda, for that. Yeah, no, in terms of expansion, I think it's something we sort of thought about. Yeah, has been beneficial in terms of Ndola, particularly being able to expand and continue the training up there when in-country fellows aren't able to visit and be there in person. Hannah, I just wanted to go to you, if that's all right. Because in particularly with regards to your situation, Anna, where you're thinking of setting up a sort of remote fellowship for the Ethiopian side of things, is there anything, Hannah, you would say that you've kind of learnt that would be useful for Anna to know in sort of setting up a remote fellowship?
I think the most important is a lot of conversation, and probably treating the remote fellowship exactly as you treat your in-country experience. So making sure that you have a really good understanding of what works remotely. So the fact that it really is based on the curriculum of the country that the partnership is based in, and making sure that you're covering those bases in a way that's useful remotely. Because as I think Nate said earlier today, there's nothing quite so bad as just repeated didactic sessions of teaching. It just doesn't work. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. And I think it can be quite oppressive when you're going through your training program if you just have that. So being really mindful of what works remotely and what teaching methods are going to be most useful. I mean, there are topics in anaesthesia that do require a bit of didactic teaching, and sometimes summarising these topics remotely can be useful. So that's one point. The other thing is just being aware of what the current clinical requirements are in Zambia and Ethiopia, because it's all very well for us to be pushing an obstetric block for a month if there's a cardiac team visiting, and actually what would be most beneficial is to go over some cardiac topics and provide some background. And the third thing I think is something that we struggle with a lot is trying not to overload trainees with teaching sessions. So on one hand, making it quite clear that there might be a number of teaching sessions, but it's about attending 60, 70, 80% of it, not having to be at every single teaching session. But also being aware that if you've got a week where there is going to be a lot more sim training, or there is going to be a visiting team doing daily teaching sessions, it's just better to step back and not have too many sessions, because it's just exhausting. And you know, anaesthetists are like, we like to cross every T and dot every I and attend everything, and I think that can be a very insidious way to create burnout in a trainee population. So I think those are my first 3 top tips for considering the fellowship, and things that we run into difficulties with but have found solutions for.
Thank you, Hannah. That's very helpful. Yes, we are sort of in final stages of setting up our fellowship. Actually, we are about to advertise in next couple of days, so that might be of interest to those of you who are looking for something to do from August. We are trying to learn from ZADP as much as we can. We also find it very helpful having our in-country fellows back in Addis now, which really helps us with setting it up and coordinating. We have been running remote teaching session case-based discussions for residents in Addis and Haramaya throughout the pandemic. So we've been doing that. We've been relying on sort of a community of practice volunteers, but I must say we have always lots of people interested with helping, but it's quite difficult to maintain that interest for a prolonged period of time. That's why we thought actually having a remote fellow for a set period of time might actually be much easier than just relying on volunteers. Obviously, we'll still invite our volunteers, especially that they have lots of expertise, and you touched on it before, That's one of the advantages of remote fellowship, that remote teaching in general, that you can bring people with expertise, which you can't have when you rely on people who travel to the country only. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah and Anna. And I think Chaowei's on the line now as well. Just Chaowei, from your experience, you've seen it through the remote fellows and then the in-country fellows coming back in. How do you feel the training program's going now, and how much do you feel we need to continue with the remote teaching or adapt the way that we do things?
Hello, thank you. Hello, everybody. Chalwe here. So I really find the remote teaching has been great, especially it really carried us through the pandemic. It really helped us stay connected with the outside world, so to speak. And we were able to continue with our training despite everything we were going through, because, you know, as anesthesia trainees and, you know, critical care trainees, we were part of the, I would say, part of the driving force behind COVID. That's in conjunction with the infectious diseases team. So it was very difficult to have in-person teaching. First of all, we weren't even in person with anybody, despite being in the same place. So this was a way for us to be able to continue with that. So it has been great. We've been able to also connect with people, even with in other parts of our country here. So like the trainees in Ndola, trainees here, were able to, you know, have everything continue together and move at the same pace. And especially now that we have both in-country and the remote, I think it works well, because we're able to do our remote teaching outside of work hours, whereas if it was just in person, we'd have to try and fit it into our daily schedule. So I find it's worked quite well, more especially now that we have separate in theater and also the remote for online classes and presentations.
Great, thanks a lot. And Anna, do you have any other questions about introducing this type of program, or anything that you think we could collaborate on? Because we have done some joint things like journal clubs. I think that that's something we could probably develop more of. I don't know whether Hannah or Anna would like to chat about that.
Actually, it's a really good idea about you know, collaborate between the programs. One thing that's been on my mind is that obviously the teaching sessions are usually on set days of the week, and the remote fellows, they sometimes work part-time, they have other commitments, so they might not be able to, you know, always be present. So sort of cross-covering even for each other could possibly work. Just add more flexibility into the system, something we could think about long term. I don't know if that would be feasible or not.
I think it would be really useful to meet and talk about it. There is no reason, because of the benefit of the internet, that we couldn't join forces. And I would imagine that a lot of the curriculum and possibly some of the layout of the curriculum would be quite transferable. And there are quite a few teaching sessions during the week, so there'll be a lot of opportunity for trainees in Ethiopia to join Zambian sessions and take part in them. There'll be a lot of options for that. And this is supposed to be one of the benefits of it being remote, is that we can widen the doors and collaborate, you know, with other people, with other countries, other places. And if it's been beneficial to have a connection between the UK and Zambia, surely it's even more so between Ethiopia and Zambia. So yeah, I would feel very positive about that and be very keen to talk about that.
Right, thank you.
And Hannah, any other steps? Because with the in-country fellows returning, are you changing the way that you're delivering it? And with the American collaboration, is there anything that you're looking to in the future?
Yeah, so there have been lots of proposed changes over the last year, which are now being able to be slowly rolled out because we have more manpower. So we had a lot of feedback from Chawi and Brenda and their colleagues that, as was mentioned earlier in the morning, having a long day of teaching and then a long day of clinical work and then teaching in the evening is pretty exhausting, especially twice a week. So with the help of the in-country fellows and also the American collaboration and other volunteers, and many of the Zambian faculty too, we are able to have some morning sessions and some evening sessions. It also gives a little bit more time if you're not having to facilitate all the teaching sessions for remote fellows to get a bit more involved with QI support and advocacy again, which because of fewer remote fellows that had become less possible. And I think that lends itself to the remote fellowship, or rather it lends itself to the remote fellowship better than simulation, which we just cannot provide remotely, and thankfully in country are back to support that. There is also has been a request from Dr. Manfansha and her colleagues to have more non-technical sessions. So we have in the past had sessions where we talk about how to do a QI project in broader terms, and also non-technical skills. There has been quite a lot of work doing low fidelity simulation and non-technical, which I think was talked about this morning. I'm sorry I missed some of that session, but it sounded really interesting. So we would be able to integrate some sort of non-clinical topics within teaching, which I think would help to broaden what can be provided in those teaching sessions and maybe bring the change a little bit more. And finally, we're having a bit more of a thought about the curriculum. There are lots of nuances of having a 4-year programme and how you make sure trainees from years 2 to 4 get equal benefit from all the sessions, and by having more people available and the mix of in-country and remote, that's becoming more possible too. So lots of exciting changes at the moment.
Just to add to that, Hannah, because there is a question that's come up asked by someone about developing more investment in subspecialties and things, and that's one of the beauties of the remote fellowship, is that actually you've got more access to people in subspecialties who are able to give some of their time to sort of deliver sessions of training and things like that. And I remember there was the sort of American team that came across who were sort of specifically looking at intensive care medicine and things like that, which actually meant that there was a period where that sort of education area could be focused on during that time. So yeah, it's one of those things where actually investing more and using the remote fellowship wisely means that you can improve the subspecialty training for residents in Zambia and, you know, by extension Ethiopia. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. It really does allow us to focus in on these key areas and also key goals of the department that UTH have this year. We can take that on board and make sure that we're also addressing the goals of development that the department has set, rather than just rolling through a teaching program that doesn't necessarily answer the current needs of the trainees to learn about a particular topic. And we have had many specialists who've come in, you know, not least Emma, yourself, coming in to do some of the cardiac sessions, and that has been of great benefit to the trainees, and I think greatly enjoyed.
Yeah, it's good to get more and more people involved, but the more and more people involved, the more and more coordination it takes. And I'm sure that Hannah is feeling like her brain's exploding sometimes, just trying to coordinate all the different people and all the different time zones, because Hannah, you'll find when you recruit people, we've got trainees from Australia or trainees going abroad that want to do some remote teaching as well. So we've got to think about being mindful of when they'll actually be able to deliver those sessions. And it might be that they'd be better as mentors rather than delivering the teaching or facilitating the teaching. And so we have that discussion when we recruit people, you know, how much time do you have available, and, you know, what times are they, because time zones make a difference. So when you don't want to put pressure on people to be delivering something at a certain time, and realize that they're actually getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to make sure they can facilitate a session on cardiac anesthesia or something like that. So you know, it's so great having such an international response to the remote fellowship, but just being mindful of what the time zones are. Does anyone have anything else to add?
I was just going to say, if you want to see the level of organization it takes, you should ask to see Hannah's Excel spreadsheet, because it's just, yeah.
I was going to say, actually, I know there's probably lots of formats for it, but having things like Google Drive where you can share documents is been incredibly useful. And despite my lack of technical know-how, having an Excel sheet where, because it's complicated and because if you're somebody who's seen the stages that's gone along, it's easier to piece it together. But somebody coming in afresh, it's so much easier to say, this is the timetable, and have a way to slot in who's teaching when, so it doesn't get forgotten or confused. It's been a godsend.
Yeah, making sure that everyone has access to that one spreadsheet, because the difficulty is we used Dropbox originally with ZADP, and it was, I mean, it's still there, and it's massive and it needs sorting out, and you know, that's the problem. You end up with so much good work and you don't want to get rid of it, but it's working out where it fits in and having one centralized place for it, which we're trying to do now that we've got Ava and Gwen as administrators. That really helps try and bring it all together, and organization of days like this are made a lot easier by people that understand that type of thing, rather than me, who's completely useless with spreadsheets. I'm sure you're definitely better than me. And I mean, having Nate on board, who's got amazing animation skills as well. So thank you so much. That's been really great. It's really lovely just to hear people free flowing rather than presenting. So it's nice to have a mixture today, and I'm grateful to all the presenters.